Welcome to New Findings of the Universe. Today, we're going to look at the moon through the eyes of a man who not only walked on it, but also held the world together with his voice from Houston. Charles Duke, an Apollo astronaut, has reached his late 80s, and he is speaking with a kind of honesty that does not chase drama. It chases accuracy. A lot of headlines say he finally admitted what he saw before he dies, but the most powerful thing here is not a hidden secret. It is the gap between the story we imagine and the reality you live inside a helmet on a world with no air. Duke is a rare figure in human history. Before he ever became a moonwalker, he was already a famous voice. During Apollo 11, he was the one speaking to the crew from Mission Control. He felt the tension in every word, the pressure of millions watching, and the fear that one small mistake could cost lives. Later, on Apollo 16, he moved from guiding others to living it in his own body. That double vision, the man behind the glass and the man on the dust, gave him a perspective that almost nobody else can offer. And that is the core of this video. We are not chasing myths, and we are not inventing creatures hiding in craters. We are going to understand what the moon really looks like, what real space silence feels like, why photographs fall short, and why Apollo 16 was far more than a flag. If you love true stories of the cosmos told with calm and wonder, subscribe now to New Findings of the Universe. Because what comes next connects the moon to the stars, to modern astronomy, and to the future of going back. Imagine you are the lifeline between Earth and space. You are not the main character on the surface, but you are the link that keeps the mission alive. That was Charles Duke as Capcom. Every phrase had to be clear, short, precise, with no hesitation. In that job, you do not only deliver data, you hold the emotional line. When Apollo 11 touched down, the whole planet felt a knot in the chest. And the voice that helped people breathe again was Duke's. Over time, that experience stayed with him, as if a part of him had been there without being there. That feeling became a strange mix. On one side, pride, because he helped guide the biggest leap in history. On the other side, the awareness that he was stuck on the wrong side of the glass, watching a dream he wanted for himself. Duke has said that tension never really faded. It stayed like an echo. And that echo gives his words weight today, because when he talks about the moon, he is not speaking from a single memory. He speaks from the memory of a man who imagined the surface through screens and telemetry, and from the memory of a man who walked it. When his turn finally came, he did not arrive at a movie moon. He arrived at an extreme place, where your body and your mind learn that everything on Earth was a filter. The atmosphere, the sky, the soft colors, the distance that turns blue because of air. On the moon, there is no veil. And that missing veil is the first major truth Duke wants to leave behind now, before his generation disappears from living memory. Because when witnesses are gone, only the narrative remains, and narratives can be bent. Here, we do the opposite. We clean the glass and look at the universe as it is. Duke says the first thing that hit him was not a rock or a crater. It was the sky, or more accurately, the absence of sky. On Earth, even on the darkest night, there is a tone, there is a background, there is atmosphere softening everything. On the moon, the black is absolute, so deep it does not feel like a color. It feels like emptiness. And that emptiness grabs your perception in a way that is hard to translate into words. Above your helmet, there are no gradients, no clouds, no faint glow. There is a void, and it collides with a surface lit by a sun with no mercy. That contrast builds a world of extremes. The light is direct, so shadows do not soften. Shadows become cuts, like ink lines drawn across the ground. Rocks look sharply edged, not because they are blades, but because your eyes do not get smooth transitions. Duke insists cameras could not capture that the way the human eye experienced it. Cameras tried to balance exposure, and by balancing, they flattened what was most intense. That is why so many people look at Apollo photos and think the moon looks simple, like a gray desert. Duke says in person, it was overwhelming, And here's a detail that breaks a popular myth. Many people believe every astronaut saw Earth as a blue marble sitting on the horizon, a permanent Earthrise. At Apollo 16's landing site, Earth was almost straight overhead, outside the natural viewing angle of the helmet. And the helmet, by design, does not let you easily look straight up. So that poetic scene Hollywood repeats was not guaranteed, and for Duke, it did not exist the way most of us picture it. He did not have a horizon with Earth hanging like a lantern. He had bright ground, black sky, and movement limited by the technology keeping him alive. That does not remove beauty from the story. It adds truth. And truth, in astronomy, is always bigger than myth. Life inside the suit was constant negotiation. You could not turn your neck the way you do on Earth. You could not lift your gaze the way you wanted. You could not trust peripheral vision. Duke describes it as living inside a narrowed world, where you explore by moving your whole body, not just your head. That changes how you read a landscape, and it even changes how you feel time. Every step has intention. Every motion costs energy. Every movement must be efficient. In that setting, the lunar environment becomes a laboratory for perception. The ground is not a soft blanket of dust. The dust clings. It works its way into seams. It behaves like something unfamiliar because it is made of particles that have not been rounded by water. That texture shapes the light. The bright and the black fight inside your eyes all the time. Duke explains you can stand in full sunlight and then see a shadow inches away that looks like a hole cut into space. A brain trained by Earth takes time to adapt. This ties directly to astronomy. On Earth, we observe the universe through air that protects us, but also limits us. Our atmosphere scatters light, filters wavelengths, blurs details. On the Moon, the lack of atmosphere creates a brutally clean view, but it also creates a brutally raw experience. It is like hearing music through a wall your whole life and then suddenly having the speaker pressed against your chest. Everything feels more direct. Duke says that rawness changed him. Not because of some hidden mystery, but because he realized the universe is not built for our comfort. The Moon does not welcome you. The Moon does not care if you exist. You are a fragile visitor, held together by engineering and discipline. And in that fragility, there is a lesson. Space exploration is not tourism. It is a conversation with reality. That is why his words matter now. Not to frighten you, but to remind you what it means to leave home. And when we talk about going farther to Mars and beyond, that truth becomes even more important. Now we have to talk about Apollo 16 as a mission, because Duke wants to correct another distortion. Most people remember only the first landing, or the mission that almost ended in tragedy. But Apollo 16 was a powerhouse of science. It was long, demanding, and focused on understanding the Moon's geological story. Duke and his commander traveled through the Descartes Highlands, a region of rugged highland terrain very different from the dark plains people usually imagine. They were hunting for clues about ancient impacts and the Moon's crust. People sometimes assume astronauts just scooped rocks into bags, but every sample had context. There were protocols, maps, descriptions, photographs, and fast decisions made in a hostile environment where everything costs time and energy. And what matters for this astronomy channel is that Apollo 16 did not only look down, but also carry the tools to look up, toward the universe. Setting up a telescope on the Moon may sound like a small detail to the public, but scientifically, it was massive. An ultraviolet telescope can see parts of the cosmos that Earth's atmosphere blocks or distorts. Hot stars, energetic regions, signatures of violent processes in space. Picture it, a human being standing on a world with no air. Placing a scientific eye to observe the sky without Earth's filter. That is astronomy in its most literal form. It is taking the observatory off the planet to view the universe in a cleaner way. Today, we have space telescopes, but this was a bold demonstration of what the Moon can be, a stable, silent, airless platform for certain kinds of observation. Duke gets frustrated when that gets ignored. Not because he wants fame, but because he wants you to remember the purpose. Lives were risked to expand knowledge. That purpose is still alive. Duke also shares something deeply human. In the middle of intense work, in a place where a mistake can kill you, astronauts sometimes looked for relief. He tells it with honesty, like a confession from his younger self. There were moments of play, jumping, testing the low gravity, as if the body wanted to feel physics as joy for a second. He later admitted it was foolish, because a fall could damage the life support system. And yet, it reveals something real. Even on the moon, even inside hardware, a human is still a human. But that humanity does not weaken the achievement, it strengthens it. It shows that exploration is not only tasks, it is keeping your mind steady in an alien environment. The mind needs small breaks. It needs to breathe. On the moon, breathing depends on systems, and every breath reminds you that you do not belong there. That sense of being a visitor makes each discovery more valuable. Here is a point Duke keeps returning to. The public memory of Apollo was built from iconic images, but it forgot the deeper layer, the science and the lived experience. And when a story becomes only images, it becomes vulnerable to distortion. That is why Duke has become a defender of Apollo's reality. Not with rage, but with calm detail. He talks about the dust that clings to everything, about how harsh the light is, about the shadows that look like bottomless pits, about the discomfort and the repetition and the discipline. These things matter for astronomy and for the future. If we want to return to the moon, it is not enough to want it. We have to understand what it is, respect it, and build better suits, better visors, better tools. And we need a culture that values evidence more than fantasy. Duke, with a voice shaped by time, is saying exactly that. Do not mythologize, understand. That is how we move forward. In recent years, Duke has faced something strange. People look him in the eye and claim none of it happened. They say the moon landings were staged. For him, that is not an abstract debate. 'Tis denial of what he lived, denial of friends who are gone, denial of a huge collective effort. What hurts is not skepticism. What hurts is erasure. When Duke responds, he often does it with one simple statement. I was there. Then, instead of shouting, he explains. He explains engineering, physics, logistics, and the physical evidence. He talks about the lunar samples that still sit in laboratories, about experiments that left hardware behind, about datasets that still match later measurements. He talks about how it feels to move in 1/6 gravity, about how limited your view is in a suit, about how different the light behaves, about the silence that is not peaceful but absolute. He is not trying to win an argument. He is building a record of testimony. That testimony carries urgency. Duke knows only a few moonwalkers are still alive. Each year, living memory shrinks. When no one is left to say, I saw it with my own eyes, the conversation will rely only on archives and trust is fragile today. That is why he speaks more now. Interviews, museums, schools, long conversations, repeating what matters. The exploration was real, and the cost was enormous. For our channel, that connects to something bigger. Modern astronomy depends on data, instruments, collaboration, and scientific literacy. If a society loses its grip on evidence, it becomes harder to build the future. Returning to the moon, building bases, placing large telescopes on the surface, using the moon as a stable platform to observe the deep universe. All of that requires public understanding. Duke wants people to remember the point. Apollo was not only politics, it was opening a door. If we protect that door, it can still take us farther. Now we reach the final message Duke seems determined to leave behind. It is not a confession of science fiction. It is a correction of perspective. He saw the moon as a place of extremes, a place that does not match our fantasies. He saw an absolute black sky, unfiltered sunlight, shadows like knife cuts, and physical limits imposed by the suit that shaped what he could even observe. He also saw something most people do not expect. Even the famous view, Earth hanging on the horizon, was not guaranteed. And for him, it was not there the way pop culture imagines it. Reality does not always match the poster. But Duke also saw something more important. He saw that Apollo 16's science, though less celebrated, is still alive. The knowledge gathered on that surface still feeds current questions about the moon's origin and the history of our solar system. For a channel called New Findings of the Universe, that is the heart of it. Every real encounter with another world forces us to adjust what we think we know. Duke looks toward the future and talks about returning. The new era that aims to go back, build, learn, and use the moon as a stepping stone to go farther. And without needing exaggeration, the truth is simple. The moon is a mirror of our ambition. If we can return with humility and science, we can also look deeper into the universe with clearer eyes. More instruments, more missions, more discoveries, and maybe, in time, a path to Mars. Now it is your turn. Think of this as a conversation. Should exploration focus on the moon first, or should we push straight toward Mars? Tell me in the comments. And tell me what surprised you most, the blackness of the sky, the brutal contrast of light and shadow, or the hidden scientific side that almost nobody remembers. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe to New Findings of the Universe, turn on notifications, and join me in the next video, because the universe does not end at the moon. It begins when we learn to see it with truth.